Okay, it says live, but I'm not getting it on my end.
I mean, I'm getting it on my end. I should have picked better phrasing, but yeah, no, we're all pictured. There's a little
All right,
timer.
well, let's just assume that technology is working correctly. Hello, I'm James Craig, an independently published author and the host of a little book club, monthly-ish. I guess I can't say it's monthly because this took almost 2 months to come to YouTube. But we read Hyperion by Dan Simmons because I had read it a while ago and I thought it was a fantastic book. And then I read a lot more books and decided that I should probably revisit it and make sure I just didn't know what was good and what was bad. So I picked it for the book club because I thought more people should read it, and I really enjoyed it, probably more the second time. Unfortunately, it is a book. It is a good book and not a good series, from what I understand. I've got with me 3 people from the Discord server, which if you want to hop in and join the book club, link is in the description. I've got Akos, Authors Play, and Jason. How are you guys doing?
Hello.
I'm doing pretty well. At what point can we just start blurting out spoilers for the book?
Let's give it 15 minutes.
Okay.
Anyone tuning in should know that I basically always spoil books because, in my opinion, if spoiling a book ruins the book, it wasn't a good book. I'm probably not going to talk too much about the final story, because A, there's not that much to say about it, and B, it just kind of wraps up the story. Before we get into that, did you guys like the book? Because I thought it was a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, no, it's if it is not my favorite book, it is one of my favorite books. And I'm tempted to say it's my favorite.
I'm ambivalent on it, honestly. 7 out of 10, I guess.
Okay, Jason?
I think it's probably the best unfinished book I've ever read. To me, it hasn't ended.
Well, you didn't like the ending where spoilers at minute 15.
And they're off to see the wizard.
Oh,
sure. What's going on?
I was waiting to say that, but no, the rules don't apply to James Craig.
No, it's my channel.
It's my channel, and I'll cry if I want to.
All right. So that's actually perfect because if all 4 of us were just like, "Oh my god, it's so good! Dan Simmons is the best writer ever," it'd be a boring 1-hour discussion. So, you may have seen in the thumbnail that I titled this Canterbury Tales in Space, because that's literally what the book is. The high-level overview of the story is in the far future of 2500 or something, if I remember the date correctly. The mankind has consolidated into what they call the hegemony. And by the way, the naming sense in this book is very on point. So mankind is ruled by the hegemony, which is essentially run by a bunch of AIs in the techno core. And the important factor is there's this planet called Hyperion, where there is a magic time-traveling monster of death that may or may not be able to grant your wish. Now, that's something that is actually extremely left out from the story, because he's the Lord of Pain and he kills people indiscriminately. And yet the Shrike Church, it's called a Shrike. The Shrike Church sends pilgrims to it every once in a while to plead for its forgiveness and a favor. And I don't recall if it said anywhere in the book that a single pilgrim had ever gotten their wish granted.
James, mankind has an unfailing capacity to believe what they want to be true rather than what is right in front of them. I don't know why you're surprised. You can just look at real life cults to see examples of this. They don't even need to be backed with a time-traveling blade demon.
So I think that was done on purpose. Because as you meet the characters, they all start sharing their stories because they're told that, hey, the ousters, these evil barbarians from outer space are coming to ravage the planet. It's full-scale war is coming. This is the last pilgrimage. And by the way, there might be a infiltrator. And so we'd better all share our stories with each other before we all die miserably, or we might die miserably too soon. So that's the structure of the book, is working through the 7 characters in the happy band of pilgrims, and you find out why they're there asking the Shrike for a wish. And spoilers, even though it's at the 5-minute mark, basically the twist is that every character has a justified reason to be going to the Shrike because they all have Shrike related problems. So it kind of answered that problem of like, does the Shrike even do anything? Kind of gets answered by the fact that they all have problems that can literally only be solved by the Shrike. Which gives a lot of structure to what would otherwise be a series of short stories, essentially. I've said many times, I hate short stories, I hate anthologies, and that's in a large part what this is. It is each character giving a little novelette of their life and why they've shown up on the pilgrimage. And yet it works perfectly because each, like, the scope of the world and the story keeps building off of the last one, and you see how they're connected to each other and why, and you're slowly unraveling what are the stakes of this battle and why. So even though it is literally a collection of novelettes detailing each of these characters' lives as they ride wind ships and gondolas north, it does create a fully cohesive space opera mega story.
James, why didn't the eagle just fly the pilgrims to the time tombs?
Because don't you know there's technobabble that prevents them from flying, or at least the ship can get there, but no humans return. Why? Who knows? You can't get there too fast, or how would you tell the story?
Whenever anything like that happens, a Shrike did it.
Well, there's this magical effect going on. Shrike did it. All right, that's something I'll touch on here. There's kind of a weird mix of like extremely rigorous hard science fiction and complete nonsense. But the nonsense is very much sequestered to the religious elements of the story, which makes them feel religious. You guys agree with that take?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
I mean,
What's the
there's not
ridiculous
much.
part?
If you think about
I'm
it,
sorry, I just read Augustin's post.
when it comes to sci-fi stuff in that book, there's not much of a explanation going on until maybe one of the later stories, like in the detective one. That's really the only one there where you.
Yeah, the detective one is pretty critical.
Yeah. That's where the only one where you really get into some of the technical stuff. Otherwise, it's more like on the side, because this book's focus is not really about plot or story. It's more about being a sort of buildings roman, if you know what that is.
It's about family.
I can see that.
It's about these characters and their sort of emotional state, mental state. It's not really a story-driven book. It's a very literary infused book, because
very literary.
If you look at American fiction, especially, there's like this dividing line between commercial fiction and literary fiction. And the commercial fiction is typically what you would say is plot-driven, very action-driven, and usually has like one central theme and just hammers the point on. Literary fiction is much less concerned with that one. It's more concerned with the mental state of a person or a situation. Sometimes being allegorical if he wants to be really preachy, and the two sides, they always like pick their nose at it one another, because if you're literally fiction writer and you grew up with Faulkner and McCarthy, you might look at commercial fiction and say it's shallow and it doesn't have that, and very derivative especially. But if you're a pulp fiction, writer and fan, they might look at the literary fiction writers and say their work is very droning and boring and self-absorbed. And this book is kind of trying to bridge the two.
Yeah, so the structure of the book, I think,
I could agree with that. Yeah,
is I think I've described it as Dan Simmons flexing his mastery of the craft, because each story is a different pulp genre for the most part. The priest tale that it opens with, which by the way, it clearly opens with that because it's such a self-contained, like low buy-in story. It barely touches on anything in the setting and gives you a full like Heart of Darkness horror story to kind of set the stage before the other characters are like, yeah, so I met the CEO of all humanity and I was having tea with her. But like the first one is definitely a horror story. You get your military science fiction, can love bloom on the battlefield story next, if I recall correctly. Third, I'm actually mixing them up because they could have almost gone.
Third is the poet.
Third is the poet. I don't even know what genre to call the poet story except self-pleasuring.
I was gonna call it Dan Simmons rants about the publishing industry for 100 pages.
That's pretty much it.
I mean, I liked the poet story, and I like the poet as a character. He's fantastic.
Did you like the little
definitely
bit
used to just like, oh, I've read so many things you don't even know.
We have such sights to show you.
That's also one of the most character focused, like in a sort of literary sense, because
the second most. The Jew.
Yeah, that's the number one most focused on the character.
the scholars
I'm blanking all of the names.
Sorry,
I got hit in the head yesterday. I'm gonna blame that.
Yeah. And the poet so is the one that's more like the second was very that focused on that one, because at some point he cannot even speak, only just a very small number of words and phrases.
Yes,
and there's a comedy in that one.
Charged vocabulary that would might get my channel in trouble.
Yeah, and that's also the most funniest part of all of the book. That's genuinely good.
I adored when he was reflecting on growing up and realizing how bad he used to be.
Yeah. The reference to Jack Mance's Dying Earth. When they're busy.
Yeah, Martin Silenus, the poet, makes $1 bajillion because he publishes the Dying Earth series. So anyways, there's the poet series, which literary, let's call that one. Then you've got basically a theological argument with the Abraham problem. And then it comes back to genre fiction with the detective story. And the council story, I guess you call a romance, I guess. Yeah, I would say the Maui Covenant story is a romance.
It is a romance, but not a. But
it's
not
not what. It's not how romance novels get written and called romance novels. Like it is a love story.
It is, but it's not a good one.
It's
the worst.
The diplomat story. The diplomat story. I literally, in my brain, the main memory I have of it is just a little file that reads, I don't know, some love stuff, dolphins, who cares? Move on to the next one.
So going back on the hard sci-fi level, I loved the idea of shipmen and how disjointed life is when you're not traveling through time at the same speed. I thought that tied in with the themes perfectly. And it kind of put a cap on explaining what's going on. Like it was very critical to the story, but it was also kind of.
It was very ham-fisted and not. It's the thing about the Konzo story is that it's not his story; it's his grandfather's story, who left behind this, this recording.
I'm very glad you didn't say her story.
And that's what we are listening to effectively through the book. But his grandfather just doesn't really. spends way too much about droning about his girlfriend going old, and not enough about like okay, why am I actually doing this? Why? Because at the very end of that story, the console, we come out from the first person, and then he basically just drops an exposition on the rest of it. It's like the editor came in at the last moment. Okay, time to wrap it up, and then Simmons is like, okay, fuck it.
Yeah,
2
so we're at
paragraphs.
15-minute mark. Let me
Yeah.
say a bit about the series. I think Hyperion is 10 out of 10. The Fall of Hyperion, the sequel, is not a 10 out of 10. It abandons a lot of the literary stylings and very much becomes just a genre science fiction piece. It's no longer really a ripoff of the Canterbury Tales. It's kind of just a sci-fi story that I enjoyed. And I have not touched the third and fourth books, the Endymion books, because what I've been told from people I trust is in the third book, he's finally forced to explain how some of the things work. Because, like I said, like the Shrike is this monster from the future traveling backward in time because screw causality. And when he finally gives explanations, apparently the explanations are such that nothing mattered. Like everything that they went through could have been avoided by people being slightly less like rude, essentially, or something.
I have the fourth book on Audible, and I'm halfway through it, and I cannot recall a single thing about it. It's not a single thing I can recall. I have vaguely something.
Do you mind a spoil? I can't remember where this comes up, so you might have actually already passed it, but it's the main thing I remember from the third and fourth book. And that is simply that the secret ingredient was love.
Wait a minute, that's the fifth element, right?
It's also Interstellar, where it's like, how do we breach the faster than light barrier? If we love each other enough, we can do anything. My God, the hyperdrive is powering up. The secret ingredient was love the entire time. That and the fact that like they go on, they do this big sci-fi Lord of the Rings style escort quest, and then like the thing at the end of it turns out to be, oh yeah, no, I'm sorry, this is for the third and fourth book, not Hyperion. Just to be clear,
yeah, Hyperion remains 10 out of 10.
Yeah, so they fucking do this big escort quest, and at the end it's like, okay, so we finally got you to the place. Now what? Oh, now I'm going to study architecture. What? Yeah, I just really wanted to learn architecture, before I do anything else. But like, people died to get you here. Yeah, I know. It was really nice of them. It's like, what the
And that's coming from the supposed chosen one.
Yeah. What a shitty chosen one. Like, my God. It's like, yeah, I'll sacrifice myself for you, but I really want to build a couple houses first. Maybe, get a little space to live in, some throw pillows. Like, and if I have to murder a couple people to do it, like, I don't think that's such a big price. So that's the main thing I remember that was cool. And I wanted to bring this up earlier because you brought up the whole, here is a chunk of hard science fiction. Here is everything else. And that is in the third and fourth books, there's the Vatican Guard shows up. And the Swiss Guard. And in the far, far future, the Swiss Guard has turned from just an honor guard with halberds and a couple guns that defend the Pope. They have fucking power armor described in exquisite detail and ride around on a super advanced mega ship that is capable of blowing away vessels like multiple times its size. And it's all like explained with hard science and this, that, and the other thing. And then you go from that chapter right back into... And here's Silenus the poet walking around in his blue fawn form because he decided to become a furry. Like, okay.
Okay, so he makes a big deal about the decline of the church. As technology progresses, there's the conflict between faith and science in the series. So I get that as the trajectory seems to be pro-faith, and that in genre fiction that would manifest with them literally being strong. That still sounds so stupid, though.
Oh, the church conquers the world in the third and fourth books, and then they fuck it all up. You like
Did he start
theocracy,
playing
don't you, James?
Warhammer 40K or something?
I guess.
It is veering into that but a little bit. It feels like there's a kind of vague sort of 40K-esque vibe to it at some point.
I just want to say before I forget again, James, that when you mentioned your mark, I half expected you to lift your shirt and to see a cruciform there.
That was a good gag.
I went all in for this episode, boys.
Yeah, so you brought that back. I'm glad you can't see the lump on my forehead. I will give the story at the end when we run out of talking points on Hyperion. We should probably come back to like the actual book that is actually recommended.
Okay,
so as I said, Canterbury Tales in Space, which by the way I was supposed to announce the next read, and I am continuing the trend of picking books I want to read after the disaster that was the previous group votes. So surprise, I'm picking actual Canterbury Tales as the next read. You like Canterbury Tales in Space? How about actual Canterbury Tales?
Yeah, Canterbury Tales is a good read.
I've just actually never read Chaucer. And it's gotten to the point where it's just like, why haven't I read Chaucer?
Because it's difficult.
I hear it's not actually.
Yeah.
There's one piece of advice where it's like, if you are frustrated with the archaic spelling, there are versions you can get of Chaucer that do nothing but change the spelling because the pronunciation hasn't changed.
Yeah, I mean, if you well, no, I guess it was the when we read The Green Knight, it was the translated version, so I guess that doesn't fucking count.
Oh, I read Tolkien's translation of The Green Knight. It's pretty good.
I read the Armitage one. It was also pretty good. Anyway, so
all right, so let's do some rankings. What do you guys think was the best story from Hyperion?
Priest.
Yeah, Priest is my go-to answer to that. It's in my opinion probably the best horror story I've ever read, but that's possibly because I don't read much horror.
I'm in between the priest and the poets because the poet is the most closest to me spiritually.
I think that's
after dealing with
all the writers I brought in. Jason, what's your favorite?
I'm thinking I would have said Scholars, except there's no resolution at all. Because I remember reading that thinking, I got to see how this pans out. And there's zero resolution. So I'll have to go with.
I think there's resolution in book 2.
There's kind of resolution in book 2, and then it ties into book 3 and 4, which is really a shame because I also really like the Scholar's Tale, but knowing where those plot points go. Oh man, do you want to know? Do you really want to know how it ends, Jason?
I'm gonna go no, based on your attitude about that.
No, I think I'm gonna be happy with picking my own because if he had wanted it to have an ending, he would have put it in the first. In my opinion, I mean, if it turns out in a sequel, that's got to be an editorial decision.
See, I don't know if that's true because he ended it with friggin' them skipping down the yellow brick road. I kind of half wonder if he couldn't figure out an ending and he's like, oh, God, I need the check. Screw it. Slam. Here you go. I'm Dan Simmons.
I wonder if it's by design because the whole book is about not just about Canterbury Tales, but about Keats, John Keats, and his poem Hyperion, which is known to be an unfinished work.
That's the biggest
Canterbury Tales.
That's such a dick move, though. Like, if you have the skills to get people super invested in a book, it's like, oh man, this is so good, and you deliberately fuck it up at the end to go, ha ha. It's like, who does that? It's like,
all right. I'm just gonna point out, you could say the same thing about the Fellowship of the Rings.
What I mean, Fellowship of the Ring was intended to be a trilogy, though. Like that was always
no, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
No, it was meant to be one book.
Oh shit! How the hell am I only learning about this now? I thought
The Lord of the Rings was written as one book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
His
didn't
editor
It was
forced
the-
him to split it into 3.
well, that's different though. I mean, he still
Well,
wrote the continuous
Why
story.
do you think that he intended to end there and didn't just pick that as the breaking point when he had written the first probably 2.5 by the time Hyperion came out?
I mean, because it's just a bad place to end it, in my humble opinion. I also seem to recall that I do know that Hyperion was based off Canterbury Tales. Fall of Hyperion he wrote that after reading The Fall of the Roman Empire and going, I can do that. And then whether he succeeded is up to you. But yeah,
Unlike many series that get famous, the Hyperion series is a finished series. You can continue reading for the whole thing and get the resolutions offered.
You know what's also ended up being a trilogy, but was one book initially?
The Hobbit movie?
Dune.
Dune. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. Isn't there like 7 Dune books?
No,
I know like 3 are from his son cashing in, but
the first 3 Dune book meant to be one. It was through editorial request that he ended up like reworking them into 3 different ones, because you can almost see the delineating lines between the acts, kinda, because Dune
I've
Messiah
only read
is
the first
way
Dune book. I
shorter.
never really liked it. So
Wait.
Dune probably needs some respect as like the first web novel, basically, because it got serialized for its initial release in like a tractor repair magazine or something.
that's amazing.
So it's not like that.
just-
It's not like that story went to print as a novel.
Yeah.
Now we have to think of an anime-esque title for Dune. I can't believe my little sister is this psychic. I woke up on a desert planet and now I have to take spice? I have to take drugs?
Taming this desert may be the strongest ever. All right, we're off track.
I used to be
I'll just give it to you. The ending is a little. The problem, the reason I'll agree that the ending is kind of bad is because the second book isn't nearly as good.
There is no ending.
It definitely made me slam by on the next book, and then I was like, "Oh, so this is the Fall of Hyperion." Well then,
I will
which
say
if Hyperion had also been a 7 out of 10 book, I wouldn't have been upset by reading a 7 out of 10 sequel.
I gotta ask one thing. Was anyone else disappointed that the ousters turned out to be the good guys? They were like built up pretty well, and then all of a sudden they're like, no, actually, we're here to free
That's
you.
a weird. So, all right, let's back off of that for a second. Talk about the naming in this, because humanity is ruled by hegemony, and the army that enforces the hegemony's will is force. It's incredibly on the nose that he's talking about authoritarian stagnation. So,
so much so that it's
talking
all in
about
caps.
on the nose.
Force.
Well, yeah, I get that, but like, granted, okay, so this might be my memory playing dirty tricks on me. I seem to recall the ousters doing a lot of nasty stuff, like prior to
yeah, it
them
goes
all of
into
a sudden.
detail with the fall of Brescia.
Yeah,
and
and
the soldier still.
Like did they resolve that and I missed it? Like, was that a false flag, or is it literally a case of, well, it's okay when we do it?
I think it's just they did it to prove a point, and that's okay. I guess
Anybody's a
because
good
it's
guy.
better than stagnation. Which
That's what
is that
Yeah,
based?
I took
War
it
crimes?
as a-
War crimes being the good guys?
that's why the consul stays kind of shits the bed, because it just dumps it on you and doesn't earn the the moral ambiguity. It just doesn't earn it.
See, I didn't take it
I
that
also-
the ousters were the good guys. I was just like,
The ousters
okay,
are the
they're
good guys in
different
the
factions.
series.
I also don't
They're
like,
They're
breakaway
misunderstood.
from the technocore slavery.
but what I don't get is that, like, oh yeah, break away from technicore slavery. Okay, cool. Do you have to gene mod yourself to hell and back to where you're barely human anymore too? Like, what is this transhumanism thing?
Look, he was just ahead of his time, and they were very woke.
Dan Simmons, like, look, I don't know what you're talking about. Then he puts on a fursuit. Now I have a place to get to.
I will say, if this was written in the late 80s, I think he was very prescient on what's going on today.
I believe Hyperion
So
was
things
mid-90s.
Yeah.
Mid 90s. I was thinking.
You want to
Still.
know?
I think it was late 80s. The first book, at least.
Do you want to know something interesting? I think like
1989.
don't like I have no evidence to support this, but I'm on YouTube, so I'm gonna say it anyway.
Go right ahead.
I'm pretty sure that Hyperion actually was relatively popular in at least some Japanese circles, because I've seen that book referenced at least 3 times in very popular anime. Everything from Gunbuster to Full Metal Panic. Although Full Metal Panic, you can argue that that was deliberately put there as a little hint to something that I'm not going to say.
So this may
I can
come as
see
a
the
surprise, but I have
influence
not
on,
watched Full Metal Panic.
Did you watch Gunbuster?
No.
Why?
Weren't those early 2000s?
Just earlier than that, there.
Yeah, that's why.
No respect for the classics,
I
James.
watch currently airing anime, and that's it. I'm keeping the industry alive with multiple subscriptions.
Oh, James,
Before
who
this
are you
becomes an
that
anime.
doesn't know his own history? Then I throw an American flag off my back and wander into an irradiated wasteland. Baron Bull, Baron
I'm
Bull.
working on it. Okay. I actually bought the full collection of Keats's poetry because I was like, all right, I finished Hyperion. We're gonna be doing the live stream about this. I should like at least read Hyperion by Keats and see if I like his stuff and get into it. And I bought the book and it was sitting on my table. And then I listened to the Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Surviving Medieval England by Brandon Sanderson. So, not bad.
Now, something I do want to say is that, and correct me if have you completed? You've read all of Fall, then, right? Yes, James.
Yeah,
so
I read the Fall of Hyperion.
Okay,
6 years ago when I read Hyperion the first time.
Okay, so I cannot remember in which book that this happens. I'm pretty sure it's Hyperion. I freaking loved the reveal where it's like, oh, the Technicore is trying to build their ultimate intelligence.
That was the detective's tale in Hyperion.
Oh, right. No, I got that. I can't remember if that's
you're talking about the human extermination, how they actually plan to do it. That was
no.
Hyperion.
No. I was talking about the reveal. It was like they're making the ultimate intelligence. So, and then as part of that, they bumble into an already existing ultimate intelligence that is heavily implied to be God with a capital G. I thought that was fucking that was great.
There's an element of that in book 2 where they're like, we're in the datum plane and we're not alone. which was a great like that really capped off everything with Technicore, in my opinion, was because you finally get the explanation of the AI's motivations, because they're portrayed as these like omnipotent super intelligences, and then you find out they're not.
Yeah, I love that fucking reversal. As a side note about the Technicore, another thing I love about them is the fact that they buy one copy of Martin Silenus's book and then just pirate it to every other AI in the galaxy.
Yeah, no, that was great. Where his editor was just like, "Oh, the AI loved it. That's why we knew it wouldn't sell." Yeah.
Turns out the oldest AI in the Technicore was just the Pirate Bay, given sentience.
All right, let's take a moment to address the fact that the entire thrust of Martin Silenus's popularity as a poet and a writer is predicated on the fact that even in the far future where there's tens of trillions of people, nobody reads.
Yeah.
That's the most accurate prediction in that entire book.
Yeah. Felt that one in my soul.
Well, I mean, I took it not that no one reads, but no one reads like deeply. Like, have you? No, I already brought this up last time. I won't bring it up again.
Yeah,
I was going to
like
reference.
He makes his paycheck with writing popcorn pulp slop. And, he's part of the Rat Pack of the future where everyone is there making their money writing slop and pretending it's not, which was that had to be a reference to probably, I call it the Rat Pack, it's probably referencing the Hemingway, Ezra Pound, etc. collection from, the early 1900s.
I mean, I can see that. I mean, honestly, you can pick a lot of circles to like compare that to. I mean, artists have this tendency to kind of conglomerate together, and if they don't, they tend to, either go crazy or fall into obscurity.
I think what it is when you're good at the craft, being in close contact with other people that are good at the craft helps all of you, whether directly or indirectly. And I think the best current example is Brandon Sanderson's writing group. Because
networking.
Well, networking definitely helps. But the fact that the cast of writing excuses are still in weekly contact, helping each other, is what's driving all of them to massive success. We just know Brandon Sanderson is just the easiest name to remember.
It's like
he is the inheritor of Wheel of Time.
It's like in early 20s and 40s when the Howards and the Clark Ashton Smiths and the Lovecrafts, they all traded letters all the time and were hanging out.
Yep. See, I almost think that's just because back in those days, I think it was not so much about networking so much it is just like everyone was into the same thing and it was hard to find other people that were into the same thing. So it's like you have the talent and the output necessary to keep writing this stuff. Robert E. Howard reasons like, hey, this is kind of interesting. I do something similar. It's like peers attract peers,
Well, yeah.
Yeah, when you've got
I think that
just
just kind of
bounce
explains
things off of.
I stand by it causes all of them to do better.
Oh, yeah, it does. I'm just saying I don't think that was their goal going in.
Sure, I can see that. All right. Like by the way, I think we all hated the Soldier's Tale the most.
I hated
setting aside the console for now, the Soldier's Tale was pretty bad.
One moment. Jason, what have you been trying to say something for like a bit now? What are you trying to say?
Can you guys not hear me?
We're only getting kind of garbled noise from you, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the reason I cut my camera, because it was getting choppy. I didn't realize my audio was. So, even try and come back.
The Technocore is trying to interfere with his transmission.
Let's see.
Well, anyway,
he actually disconnected. Okay.
Yeah, he said he'll be back. He'll probably
he had to farcast to his bathroom on a ocean planet.
Holy shit! I just realized something. So Martin has a thing where he literally farcasts like to the ocean planet to shit, right?
Yeah.
That's literally the entire plot of a Rick and Morty episode.
Oh, you're talking about the most private toilet, and then someone interrupts it.
I can't fucking believe it took me this long to realize that was they ripped that off from fucking Hyperion. Oh my! Ow! Oh, that's pain.
I wouldn't necessarily say that was a direct thing.
I don't know
that's the kind of thing that can filter through stories. By the way, Jason, I do see you there, but you have no devices, so I can't add you.
No devices. To answer your question, though, I actually hated the Maui Covenant story the most. The Soldier's Tale was meh.
The first half of the Soldier's Tale was fairly good, straightforward. And then the later stuff that comes up after that is getting a bit too... he's trying to be like a bit like Howard Barker at the very end of it, when the whole thing happens with the
Right. So
what happens?
Four phases to the Soldier's Tale. There's the Battle of Agincourt, which is cool Then there was some interconnecting material as he like actually starts his work as a soldier, which kind of bored me, but I gave it the grace because I liked Agincourt. Brescia was cool. Everything where he magically super marines his way through the medical ship and onto Hyperion was horrible. The magic time travel suits just did not work for me.
Am I like losing my mind, or am I forget that at the very end of it, he starts, having,
Yes,
he meets the Shrike at the very end, and it's not.
And he tries to eat him.
Yeah, that ending was weird.
Yeah. All right, so you seem to have a better connection now, Jason. What have you been trying to get in?
Oh, I was just throwing in quips here and there. Nothing substantial, I don't think. Nothing that I can remember, anyways. But it's good to know that it'll be heard now.
Okay. All right. Priest Tale, excellent piece of horror. Without breaking in, like it's actually hard. Okay, the two of you that have read book 2, do you count the Priest Tale as hard science fiction?
Not really.
Yeah, so magic regenerating parasites that turn you into a cow, essentially. I think it's within the domain of hard sci-fi, but it's a little questionable, but you kind of need questionable in order to get to horror if you're not just doing like a slasher piece. That's what I really like Priest Tale.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a gray area. You can kind of see how it could work. Like it's pushing the boundaries, but like you could see it. That's how I would say it. It's like on the borderlands there.
So that gets followed up by the Soldier's Tale, which we just talked about. Really cool ideas, I think, of, hey, if we need to train our officers, we're going to put them through like years and years and years of the most critical battles we have records of. Story 3 was Martin Silenus' story, where it's just whiplash, or it's almost a comedy in a lot of ways through the public industry.
Smash cut to Martin Silenus putting Joker makeup on. I realized my life was a comedy.
Yeah, until it's established that his muse is the Shrike killing people for no good reason.
Until Seth King Billy, and then rest in peace, Seth King Billy. You were too good for this world.
Then you get the Abraham problem, which is I call it a theological argument, which I'm not qualified to actually debate. Very sad though. Like that story got to me when I read it.
Do you want to know the background of the Abraham problem theologically?
Go for it.
So I can't remember what the Hyperion resolution on it was. It might actually be the same, but the consensus when last I checked was that the entire reason why this whole story of the Abraham being told to sacrifice his son and then God saying, "Gotcha," it was just trolling, was to point out that no matter what happens, I will never ask you to do this. If I ask you to do this, it is just a troll and a test. Don't fucking do it. It was put into the Torah as the strongest possible. Do not do this. This is part of what differentiates us from the other religions of the time, is that we do not sacrifice people.
It's also Benjamin Button.
Well, that part's not in the Bible.
Is it? Got the updated. Come
on. So after that is the detective story, which I guess I have a bias towards, considering it's a tech-noir detective story with super gadgets and AI and stuff.
One thing.
It was a fun story.
Yeah, one thing. This is something I really jump up to me when I was listening to the Audible version. I'm pretty sure this story was written in third person and then reworked into first person.
I think it switches. I
No, no, no.
couldn't
It's
sitting here.
first
I couldn't tell
person
you now.
throughout all of it is first person, but the writing and the prose really indicates third. It's like they have a dialogue, and then one line. I folded my arms. You don't really do that in first person. Why would you? Unless you're picturing the scene like a director pictures a visual image from the outside, from the third person. This is something that always like kind of bugged me. A lot of the first person prose stuff.
I wonder if he
I
did
didn't know.
that
Yeah, good.
because she's the only female character, and he probably wrote it in third person since it's from a female point of view, because it was more comfortable, and then he had to go back and revise it to make it more feminine. Just to get that first draft down. It would.
I mean, I
Just
thought he was just
speculation.
writing in the style of a noir detective thriller.
He does, but I don't. This is one of those like small things that only maybe I'm bothered with. I'm the only one who gets so anal about that. When you write first person, then you drop in a line, I folded my arms. When you retell a story to someone, to an audience, you don't really just drop in kind of small, like kind of innocuous details like that, unless there's something you really want to emphasize.
I mean, so we'd have to. None of us here have it in paperback. We can't find this line, but in general, the line "I folded my arms" isn't necessarily an innocuous line. That is very reasonably intentional body language communication, where she is taking a physical action to communicate her opinion about what just happened or what was just told to her. No, it's just like
Yeah, but it doesn't
She
really
is a
float
very
up by
physical
any other
character.
sentence. So it's like
we'd have to get the passage, which isn't currently an option. You might be right. We'd have to actually see it to come to a conclusion here.
Maybe because I'm just that manically technically minded, and for me it's like it's one of those like small things. I'm pretty sure it happened in other stories, but the narration just kind of brushed it over, and I didn't really catch it. It's one of those things when I think it's the narrator that's kind of make it sound more, make it stick out more than it would be on the page when you read it. Because it
didn't bother me.
The ending was really fucking good when they attacked the
church. The shootout where they go get all the random RPG loot taken from everywhere and just buy out the job.
The race to the church steps. Yeah.
All right. So I read that novelette, and it has so many tropes in common with what I write. And I feel like by virtue of it being a single novelette in what is otherwise a massive sprawling space opera, it was correct for Dan Simmons to basically go all in on all the tropes and just hit everything possible immediately without wasting time. It made it feel a little over the top, and that I think that's possibly just personal preference. I would never write a story like that. I perhaps just simply as my perspective as the writer wouldn't want to write a story where this one person is determining the entire fate of all the artificial intelligences in the world. So he's going to get every single gun and he's going to blast his way to the temple. And I think that it actually ends up limiting the story. Typically, if you want to stay in that genre, that was my big issue with Neuromancer by William Gibson. Is once you've told the Wintermute story, there's really nothing left to tell in the sprawl. But it was still really good. That frustrates me. All right. We all like the detective story, even though you don't actually get resolution on that until book 2.
I mean, if you can call that resolution.
Good point. The detective story is a completely incomplete story, is the problem.
Yep. The 2 I like the most are completely incomplete stories.
Maybe that's a thing, Jason. Maybe you just like filling in the blanks with your imagination.
I don't know. I like them when they stick the landing, but I really liked the build-up for these 2 stories. I think that's probably my frustration, is that I wanted these 2 stories in particular to be wound up. And I won't even get into the captain's story that not appearing in this film.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to. We don't get the Templar's story.
Oh yeah,
Which
we
never get it. No. I was waiting for that one. I was like,
yeah, so was I. I was just like, you're telling me I got to pull up a different 15-hour audiobook to get that? Come on, man, I ain't got that much time.
The thing that really bugged me about it was he reminded us right at the end. It's like, wait, I think that might be a Templar out there. I'm like, you know what? He should have been the dead guy, in the boat or the wagon. At least that would have made sense to me.
James, have you considered analyzing the literary parallels between Hyperion and hit Steam game Among Us?
Right, so we're wrapping up the Hyperion discussion there. Overall, I still give Hyperion a 10 out of 10 as a book. I loved it. I highly recommend it to anyone that wants to try science fiction that they may not have heard of before. And it just bugs the shit out of me that, like, you talk to people and, hey, what's sci-fi? You read sci-fi? What do you read? And they'll say, like, Expanse, Dune, Starship Troopers.
Oh, James, let me make it even worse for you. What sci-fi do you read? Oh, I read all the Star Wars books. They're
Doctor
so good.
Who. Oh, I'm really big into the Star Trek series.
Read all the 40K books. Good luck with that.
I actually like the 40K books, but
there's so many of them, but there's some really good ones, especially if you check out Chris Wright's stuff. He's really good at that. Yeah.
I'm a Dan Abnett fanboy.
He's also good because Gaunt's Ghost is a fucking great series. It's
yeah. The most recent 40K book, the most recent I read was Gaskell Thraka because I wanted to read an orc book. But Prospero Burns was fantastic.
I remember that one. That was pretty good.
For me, the most recent one was Reeds and Shadow, which was kind of parallel with Hyperion in a sense that you got 3 characters and each tell their story from their kind of point of view, from first person past, and they running parallel to one another. It's more concise and much more shorter than Hyperion, of course, and it's more plot focused.
All right. If you catch me asking for recommendations in the Discord, you should remind me of that one.
Yeah. Also, Lords of Silence, because
the
audiobook on Lords of Silence is fantastic.
I basically only do my 40K books through audiobook. I guess I've been buying Gaunt's Ghost by the physical omnibuses. But anyways, my 2 sleeper sci-fi recommendations for people are Hyperion and Permutation City by Greg Egan. You should probably I've actually greatly enjoyed following Greg Egan because he posts a lot of deeply nerdy scientific things to his Twitter. But I will finally, as we're wrapping up here, I'll finally explain how I hit myself in the face with a hammer. I went to the Ohio Renaissance Fair yesterday to finally become a true fantasy author. Do you know what that means?
You wore a kilt?
No. I am now a true fantasy author instead of a sham fantasy author. I now own a sword. And while I was there goofing off with my friends, there was a elimination contest for the strongman can you ring the bell thing. And I bought in on that. And first round, fine. Second round, fine. Third round, fine. Fourth round, he tightened it so much because he couldn't eliminate people from the group fast enough. he tightened it so much the spring on the board that lets it work broke. So while he had to go get the spring to fix it, he put us on the other one, which had been maxed out on stiffness. And the stiffer it is, the less force can transfer from the mallet to the weight that goes up and hits the bell. So it was so stiff that literally nobody could ring the bell, including the guy that's like, yes, I'm the grand champion. This is my thing. Like, nobody could ring it. And it was so stiff and it absorbed so little energy that when I full swung and smashed the hammer into it, it just bounced back and hit me. So overall, I ended up taking second when they got the spring repaired. And that was fun. And I still have a lump on my head, though.
I was going to ask how many horns of ale were involved in this story.
I only had like one glass of mead.
But how many soup in a bread bowl did you eat?
None. That was actually a problem because I didn't eat nearly enough, and it was 90 degrees and sunny, and I basically sweated to death.
Oof.
All right. Moving to wrap up because this is supposed to be a 1 hour thing. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on. Do you have
One
any
more
links
thing.
you want advertised?
I thought we're going to like wrap it up with just final words on Hyperion. So
Oh, sure. You got final words. Go right ahead. Floor is yours.
I would say, and the reason why I say 7 out of 10 is because if you're a writer or critic, then you should definitely try it because you could learn a lot from it, from perspective to genre conventions to a more economic prose, because that was also really good in that. If you are going in solely for the story, more casually, it might not going to be that good for you because by design it's incomplete. And just in general, it has this very scattershot nature to it, the way it's made. So the experience itself is going to be scattershot for you, depending on, so that's pretty much it.
Sure, that's totally fair.
I will say I enjoyed it, even though to my mind it didn't stick the landing the whole time I'm reading it. I'm like, okay, there's things that kind of bug me, but for the most part, I just have to keep turning the page. So I enjoyed it, which to me, I think there's no higher praise for a book than, hey, what's on the next page?
Okay, you got to be careful of that because I couldn't put down Dungeon Crawler Carl, and that is not high literature.
I think
didn't say anything about high literature. All I said was, if it's a page turner, it's a good book in my book.
I think the highest praise you can give a book is paying money for it.
I mean,
are you advertising? Are you saying that people should go to Amazon and buy my books?
Going back to
Sure.
what I said in the beginning, the divide between commercial literature and literally high literature should not be like a huge gap. You should be able to like bridge it. These two should not be like completely separated and treated as like.
So the reason there's a separation is because there's a gap in money. Literary literature does not make money.
Depending on who you are. If you are a brand name, then you definitely.
Yeah, so it's like a U curve.
Yeah.
Like if you are kind of between genre and literature and you're kind of average, you're making no money. If you're Dostoevsky, you're selling millions and millions of copies of literary works, and that's fine for you.
No.
And if you're just writing lit RPG slop, you're making a lot of money, and that's fine for you. Those are ends of a curve, though, and everyone in between is forgotten and poor.
I seem to recall Dostoevsky being quite poor for a long period of time, or am I remembering wrong?
Well,
he was a Russian. Everyone's poor in Russia.
But he was rich in spirit.
He was.
I should read more Dostoevsky at some point because I actually quite liked Notes from Underground, even though I read it sick out of my mind. I had such a fever.
I got a fever. The only cure is more writing.
That is what I gotta go do. because I need to actually release some books. I will be releasing book 3 of the Bastion Blackstone series later this year. I'm just pushing it to the holidays at this point. Viewers, thanks for tuning in. You should hit like and subscribe. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on.
No
Thanks
problem.
for
Happy
having
to
us.
do it.
Good day.